with the Joe Biden video. 5, 4, 3. Let me see here. 2, 1. Welcome to Speak the Truth with your host, Harold Bell. And we're going to start off with a video and then roll it over to Harold Bell.
Had a meeting with civil rights leaders, and so we covered the portion on executive orders. What he said about executive orders was not good. There's also a part where he flipped out when civil rights leaders were prodding him to do more on race issues. Watch this.
Of the progress they thought they would have seen at this point. Let's not disappoint them, and let's not get to a place where voters in Georgia begin to second guess.
Okay, let me respond. I've got to go. Let me respond. There's a lot to respond to here. Let's get something straight. You shouldn't be disappointed. What I've done so far is more than anybody else has done this far. Okay, number one. Number two, I mean what I say when I say it. I mean what I say when I say it. I'm the only person who's ever run on 3 platforms that I was told could not possibly win the election, and I never ceased from it. One was on restoring the soul of this country because of what I saw happen in Charlottesville. That was it. No one else was talking about it. The words of presidents matter. Nobody else, no progressive, was talking about it. I did. My son Bo used to have an expression. He said, remember, Dad, home base. It ain't worth the job if I can't say what I believe. I didn't want to run this time. I ran this time because of the racist son of a gun who was president of the United States of America. That's why I ran. And you remember, a lot of you told me talking about the soul of America was going over people's heads. They didn't know what we're talking about. The words of a president matter. What a president says matters. And you've never seen me shy away. In the middle of the debate, I called him a racist. In the middle of the debate with him, I took on white supremacists. I'm the guy that took on every single time somebody was threatened in this country. The only white boy you know who did it, period, out there, every single time. So look, all I'm saying here is, guys and ladies, we're on the same exact page,
He goes on to say, and he was angry as he was saying it, he was like, you do know that the Hispanic population is growing a lot, and there are more of them than there are of you all. And so you're going to have to learn to work with them. And that really is an insight into how he sees these issues. The way Joe Biden sees these issues now is the classic, stereotyped neoliberal way of viewing these issues, which is like, hey, what more do you want? I'm putting you guys in my administration and I'm calling Trump racist. So I'm the perfect president on these issues. As if like the end all be all to black voters, working class people of color is like, hey, let's make sure we have people of color in the administration who then turn around and continue the status quo. No, because the status quo isn't good enough. So he got mad. He said, you shouldn't be disappointed. I've done more than anybody. I like when he said, I'm the only white boy who's done this. He says, you shouldn't be disappointed. I've done more than anybody. Then he goes on to explain, I ran on restoring the soul of the country. I ran on Charlottesville. And here's his main thesis. Quote, the words of the president matters. See, Joe Biden genuinely believes that probably the biggest part of his job is virtue signaler in chief. So if he goes out there and he's like, racism is bad, racism is a scourge, Trump is a racist, and diversity is awesome. If he goes out there and says those things, he views that as equal to actual progressive governance that materially improves lives of people of color and all working Americans. He thinks that that's like part and parcel of his job is to just be the national cheerleader and soothsayer and the person who's like, hey, racism is still bad, okay? and the words of the president matters. And it's just like, no, that's not really the important part of your job. The important part of your job is legislation, is fighting to implement a policy agenda. That's the thing about your job that really, 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 really matters. But he thinks like just saying the right things substitutes for a policy agenda that improves lives. And then also remember his record, guys. This is a guy who gave a eulogy at a famous segregationist funeral. I think it was Strom Thurmond. He worked with segregationists on busing. You know, like, he's not even what he's currently portraying himself as being. There was a time when his record was abysmal on these issues. But it really is telling, isn't it, that his view is like, I'm putting you guys in the administration, you guys meaning powerful neoliberal black people, I'm putting you guys in the administration, like, what more do you want? I'm putting you in the administration and I'm calling Trump racist and I'm saying racism is bad. Mission accomplished, right? No, actually, not even close to mission accomplished. How about raising wages for people of color and for all Americans? How about doing that? You don't want to do that? How about getting health care for black Americans? How about that? How about that? How about ending the racist drug war that you helped facilitate? You wrote the crime bill. You locked up more brown and black people than arguably anybody in American politics today. But again, he thinks if I just say the right things, that substitutes for action. I'm saying Trump is racist and Trump is bad and racism is bad. And I'm putting you in my administration. So shh, how could you be mad at me? It says a lot about Joe Biden. And remember, he already admitted in this same call, I'm not going to flex executive authority as much as you want me to. That means no executive orders on things that he views as borderline in terms of the constitutionality of it. God, it's so ugly. I hate this, man. I hate this.
Okay.
Brian Grimm for getting this.
All right. CJ, you must be salivating.
Man, I know he is. Look, first of all, okay. Well, hi, I'm Harold Bell. And of course, this is Zoom Sunday and Speak the Truth. Our team member, Maggie Linton, will not be here today. She's tailgating with her other Kansas City Chiefs alumni and fans. So they tailgating. But we got you guys. Of course, we got my man CJ all in on politics and sports. And we got, of course, my friend Juanita Bright, our community advocate, and back with us this Sunday. I'm sorry she missed last Sunday. That was a hell of a show. Of course, we're talking about Jackie. Jackie has been very, very busy here lately, and but she's been doing things for the family, for school. Jackie, as you know, is a former writer for the Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, the New York Post, and she's assistant dean or dean of the Morgan State School of Communications. She wears so many hats, but really somebody that's had my back for the past 40 years, of course, Jackie Jones. And up in the left-hand corner is my man, the facilitator, the CEO, and publisher, and founder of Black Men in America. Guys that wears as many hats, so it's all of us put together. And I'm talking about none other than Gary Johnson. What I want to do, man, I wanted to start off with that because that is so important. I got in, I do a show called Detox. And the guy that's the producer and does the show and said, well, you know, Joe Biden, Harold, that's your man. You voted for him. I said, that's my man because I voted for him. You know, some folks speak and before they think, you know. I wonder, I wanted to ask him, I'm going to ask him, how many presidents have you sat down with? How many congressmen like Strom Thurmond and guys like Lou Stokes and Bob Dole? How many of these guys have you broken bread with? I went with Nixon. And that wasn't because he was my man. That was because I was in the right place at the right time. And I wasn't going to turn down going to the White House. His brother from an outhouse in Northeast D.C. gets to the White House. So a lot of things about politics, man, that we as Black folks don't stop and think about, man. So I wanted all of us to see that piece by Joe Biden because, man, I was really taken aback of how he spoke down to those Black folks who spoke. I didn't know half of them. I didn't know but one of them, Al Sharpton. He sat there. Of course, you know why he's sitting there because he wanted to sit at the table to get some money. That's what he's all about. So that's what I wanted to start out with, and I want to start out with you, Jackie. I want to start. What did you think about that piece? I mean, what did you get out of it? Did I miss something?
You know, when I saw it, I thought back to the Clinton administration and what folks call the sister soldier moment, where the candidate speaks down to Black folks like a signal to white folks to let them know that I got these people under control. And I think that's this was Biden's sister soldier moment, where he was going to say, look, I'm helping y'all people and y'all need to slow down and understand that I'm with you, but I'm not going to let y'all dictate to me. And so there's always that I'm going to push you back a little so that he can appear to have control over the groups who white folks are afraid are going to snatch the rug out from under them. And so, I mean, even Obama had it to some degree. Every president has that moment where he says, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to look out for people. But now everybody's not going to get everything they want. And that's the nature of politics. The other thing is that most politicians, most elected officials spend their time thinking about the next election. And so everything's a balancing act. What are the optics? What's going to play well? Who do I need most in this moment? All of those things are part of calculated decisions. So what I saw in that is what I have seen in nearly every politician I've ever known. He's going to do some bad things. He's going to do some jacked up things. But in the end, it's all about him and what it takes for him to succeed by his definition of success. And it almost never has much to do with people except for their overall philosophy about government and governing.
Yeah. Okay, Juanita?
My thought is, who's he talking to? That's clearly what he was saying was directed at a population of people that wasn't sitting in that room. It was, to me it was staged. He knew what he had to say for a certain population of people to hear, and it wasn't the ones in that room. I'm not surprised. I mean, business as usual.
Yeah. All right, CJ, I will save you for last, but Gary disappeared. What do you think, CJ?
Again, I'm with everyone else. It's not very surprising. It's goes with Joe Biden's history, and it goes with the overall philosophy of the current Democratic Party of be grateful for crumbs because we could be giving you nothing, like the Republicans. Like that's their only argument is always the other guys are worse, not what we can offer you. As Kyle was saying, I think Kyle Kulinski is also one of the best political commentators that is currently going right now because he looks at issues objectively based on policy and not off of just rhetoric and how things make people feel. And it just goes back to that. Again, like he said, restoring the soul of a nation is not a policy agenda. That's not a policy agenda for criminal justice reform. That's not a policy agenda to empower the Black community or do anything. That's saying racism is bad, kind of like what he was saying in the video, which is that's not a policy agenda. And just it's just the overall attitude that people should be grateful for crumbs because you can get nothing is the reason why the Democrats are kind of struggling now off the gate. They're struggling right now currently with the stimulus checks. This is the argument they're making. They promised $2,000 checks. They had ads showing pictures of checks with $2,000 on it, saying $2,000 in your bank account immediately if we win the Senate. Those checks are now down to $1,400. Now they're down to $1,400 for income, maybe to 75,000 or 50,000. So it continues to get whittled down, and it continues to get watered down. And that's just, again, and if you criticize the Democratic Party for that, their response is, well, we could give you nothing. Like the Republicans want to give you nothing, but that's not a good argument. Like that's not good politics. As Jackie was saying, you need, even if you are thinking of optics in the next election, that's not good political strategy to disappoint the voters who just delivered you the Senate in Georgia, who you said $2,000 immediately. And now you're saying $1,400 eventually when we get around to it, after we, you know, maybe means test it and make sure less people get it and negotiate with Republicans and do this. Like, that's not what people want to hear. Not everyone is politically savvy enough to know about Senate politics or procedural Senate stuff or all the excuses that they're given. If you knew that you couldn't deliver on the promises, you shouldn't have made those promises. You should have been promising $1,400 if we win the Senate when we get it through. Like, that's the issue. So they're running into blowback just as a larger view of their philosophy of be grateful because the other guys are worse. It's the same thing, like vote for Biden because Trump is worse, not because Biden is offering a clear agenda or he has anything to offer, but look at how bad the other guys are. They had a memo leak saying the Democrat strategy in 2022 would to be to try to link all the Republicans to QAnon and say they're all crazy and extremists. But again, that is another strategy saying, look how crazy those guys are, not what we're going to do for you. What are we going to offer the American people? What policy agenda do we have? What is our vision for the country? Again, the Democratic Party is all about the other guys are worse. So whatever we give you, be grateful for.
Gary?
Well, I think Jackie nailed it, particularly about politicians. Politicians are intoxicated by power. They vote their interests. They're looking to the next election and what they need to do. And I think that host and CJ also nailed it. A lot of politicians just believe that, you know, they can pretty much say and do whatever they want for Black folks. That Black folks will just over time just accept it. And historically, that's proven to be true. And so I think there's very little risk for him when he says those things. People have short memories. And when those stimulus checks go out, if they're $1,400, even if they were $1,200, all of a sudden people will forget because they got something from it.
If I could add to that too, like it's also the mainstream media. Like you didn't see that clip circulating on any of the mainstream media. I know you didn't see that on CNN, didn't see that on MSNBC, didn't see that anywhere. Like the mainstream media covers for these corporate politicians. Like that's what they do. They run fluff pieces. They don't ask tough questions. They don't highlight the real policy agenda. They'll say Joe Biden said racism is bad. Yeah, the kids are still in cages. He didn't stop that. All the things that people said, oh, let's get the kids out of cages. They're still in cages. That should still be a story. But again, the media is also perpetuating some of these issues.
I think that's largely because the media, the news media, are no longer owned and run by journalists.
Absolutely, they're corporate. They're there to make money, not to inform.
And so they're looking at numbers. They're looking at ratings. They're looking at, most of the time you've got people who are pundits. You don't have real journalists on a lot of these shows that are the influence makers. And so you've got somebody who worked as a politician, was a speechwriter, was a cabinet secretary, was a chief aide of some kind to a politician. And so they're just waiting for their next election when they can glom on to somebody whose coattails they want to ride into their next political operative job. And so the average viewer doesn't make the distinction. As far as they're concerned, this is all news, it's all journalists. And so they think that's the news media telling them what they want them to hear. And they don't realize that the news is a sliver of the real information, and everything else is just content and opinion. And so if that's how you're marketing, I have a good friend who was on one of these shows or was auditioning for a show, and he was explaining policy and why something was working the way it was. And when they broke for the commercial, the producers came in, they wanted him to argue with one of the other panelists. And they were like, well, yeah, you made a really good point, but what you really want to do is to call out so-and-so, and you need to push back a little more and raise your voice some and be more animated. And he thought, this is not what this calls for. So then when they came back from commercial, one of the other panelists kind of upped the ante a little bit and said something. And so he pushed back a little, but he still wasn't ranting and raving and throwing his arms around. But when they broke for commercial, they were like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We want more of that from you. And so my friend said he withdrew from the job application because he said that wasn't journalism. That's not what he spent years covering politics to do. And then he wasn't going to sit on TV yelling and screaming at somebody and calling them an idiot and trying to be pro or anti anything in the extreme. But that's what's out there, and nobody's reining it in. Even with newspapers, the owners of these news organizations are not journalists. They don't have journalistic sensibilities, and they definitely don't have journalistic ethics.
Washington Post is a good example.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things, man, we got to remember, and those are all of you who are sitting here, remember how we've gone back and forth on the black farmer? Remember how we've gone back and forth on the black farmer with Lawrence Lucas and him bringing on the black farmers? Well, what does Biden do? He nominates this guy, Tom Vilsack, which everybody knows and calls a racist. Everybody. Where are the Congress? Where's Clyburn? Where's Obama? where are these folks, man? How you gonna put Vilsack in there and everybody is against him coming back? Because he has mistreated the black farmers for the whole 2 terms that he's been in there. But that's Joe Biden is bringing him aboard anyway, so that should be a red flag. That should be a red flag for all of us. Not only that, he gets on national television and tell black folks, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I got your back. You had my back. And then the first thing he does is talk down to these same folks that he claimed are the reason that he's in office. So, man, something is wrong with that. Something is wrong with our politics, period, in the black community. Something is wrong, man, because there's no way that, well, everybody been talking about Kamala Harris in her background, her history. So once again, we are in trouble, and right out the bag. And we'll stop and think, where are we with the COVID-19? COVID-19, that has become a political football. That has become a political football. Anytime you go see in the DMZ, District, Maryland, Virginia, that 260,000 white folks have been vaccinated, whatever, and only 60,000 black folks have been vaccinated. You know what that is? That's genocide. That is a form of genocide. Now here in Maryland, I had to take my wife all the way over to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore to get her a shot. Okay? I took over and thinking I'm gonna be able to get my shot too. You know what they told me? Well, since you weren't a patient here, you can't get no shot. How does that make sense to you? So now I'm come back, and of course, Governor Hogan has taken over having his people send out the notices of who can be vaccinated for the whole state. Not also Brooks and them don't have nothing anymore. It's Hogan. So where do we turn, man? That's what I'm saying, man. Where do we turn? Somebody. I don't have a clue, man. I don't know when I'm gonna get a vaccination. And really, at this stage, man, it really doesn't make any difference to me as long as I got my wife vaccinated. It really, because I understand exactly where I am and who I am. Go ahead, CJ, you dare to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying, COVID has just exposed the inequities of how our government is uniquely corrupt. There's a lot of corrupt governments around the world. I'm not saying that everybody else's is better, but I'm saying when we're the only country with a for-profit healthcare system where the design of our healthcare system is not healthcare. Like the number one priority of our healthcare system is making profit, and then healthcare is a secondary function. And then we're seeing now that we have a deadly healthcare pandemic, how well that's working out when people need healthcare. Now we're the only people where your healthcare is tied to your job, where the unemployment is now 4 times what it was for the Great Recession. And a lot of those people lost their jobs at no fault of their own and lost their healthcare. Now what? Now what? Like, as you said, now people need vaccinations. That whole system's a mess. How many different private insurance networks do we have that we have to go through, and they have to get their billing, and they have to do all this extra steps that get in the way of just distributing a vaccine in a simple way. Like it's because money is overtaken our politics. We have to figure out a way where we can get the money out, where it's not unlimited dark bribes to whatever political faction, because that is what's causing people like Biden to go against popular policies that would even be politically helpful. Like there's no, like Medicare for all is extremely popular, especially since the pandemic. To say you would veto that during the pandemic is not a popular decision. That's a decision for your donors. As you said, Tom Vilsack being appointed, even white farmers don't like Vilsack. So like the fact that he was the pick, that was a pick for Wall Street. That's straight up. It wasn't for farmers. It wasn't for black farmers. It wasn't for white farmers. He's hated universally by all farmers, apparently. It's just Wall Street that likes Vilsack. And guess who got the nomination? Like, so it's the only reason to be against $2,000 checks when most people would agree that 2,000 is not enough. There were like 6 or 7 months gone by with no aid whatsoever. So maybe retroactive checks, but the fact that we're having a debate about which people should starve and which income bracket because the government is too tight to give out $2,000 checks instead of $1,400 checks, and doing all this retroactive math and saying that was a down payment because what had happened was our pockets are tight now. When they can bail out the banks, they can bail out Wall Street, the military industrial complex gets a blank check to do whatever it wants at all times. Whenever Wall Street needs something, it's no strings attached. What do you need? We'll bail you out immediately. That legislation gets done in a week. It gets pushed through. It's bipartisan. Everybody agrees. But when people need help, all of a sudden, America, our pockets get tight. All of a sudden is, how do we pay for that? What about the deficit? What about, well, I don't know about the income. Like it's BS. Like that's all it is.
Yeah, the deficit tripled under
Trump for his tax breaks for the rich.
Yeah.
You gave away tax breaks for the rich. And then all of a sudden, starving people are dying during a pandemic. We don't know if we have it. I don't know if we can afford 2,000, maybe 1,400 for some people. Like, it's crazy that this is the debate we're having in America when every other developed country has already figured out retroactive checks, either subsidizing wages partially. Some countries have done that, pay 75% of your wage, because that's how you beat COVID. That's how you allow people to stay home safely. That's how you allow the quarantine to work, because you can't say stay home, but your bills are still due. You might be employed, but what about your hours? These businesses aren't doing the same amount of revenue. They're not able to sustain. You can't just ignore it and just say, we're going to power through COVID without some sort of relief for people. And I think how out of touch people are in DC to think that $600 doesn't matter. They're saying, it's just $600. So why are the poorest complaining about it if it's just $600? Well, if $600 was such an insignificant amount of money, why don't you just put it in there? And that would be easier politically than trying to explain why $2,000 equals $1,400. But again, it's because these are moves on behalf of their donors. And this is where they have to squirm and explain why they're against policies that some of them that up to 75% of Americans on both sides of the aisle agree on.
Oh boy. Okay, man. Today is Super Bowl Sunday. I wonder, what is the most important game being played in the world today? It sure is not football or basketball or baseball. It's a game called life. But all of us, everybody's Super Bowl Sunday, they want to go out and get all 2 pounds of wings, and people are dying all around us. They broke and everything else. But Super Bowl Sunday, it's here. Gary, could we run our clip on Super Bowl Sunday?
Is this the one with you and Larry, or the one for?
Yeah, but it's me and Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald is the father of Larry Fitzgerald Jr., who's on the way to the Hall of Fame as a wide receiver. Larry is a sports writer in Minnesota. And I interviewed him 29 years ago when the Washington Redskins were getting ready to play the Buffalo Bills. And this was the interview.
All right, let's do it.
I'm your host, Carl Bell. Like I promised you, and I said earlier, we're talking about the hire of the NFL's second head coach. And it's something that we got to be jumping up and down and clapping and hooray, playing cheerleaders, because the NFL has hired its second coach. What has taken them so long that we need to be cheering in 1992 that they've hired their second head coach. Right now, we're going to travel out to Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and talk to a young man that you've heard many times here on Inside Sports. He is the sports director of KFAN Radio in Minneapolis. Also, he's a sports writer for the Minneapolis Spokesman and St. Paul Recorder. He's also a correspondent for ESPN, the radio network. It's so good to watch these young guys grow. I'm telling you, I'm really proud of them. I'd like to welcome to Inside Sports, Mr. Larry Fitzgerald. How you doing, Larry? Very good, Will. How's the weather in Washington? Oh, it's beautiful, Larry. I tell you, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I wish it was like this in Minnesota on Super Bowl day. I would really travel out there, but I see where you guys got snow up to the telephone booth. People can't even get the telephone booth to make calls, man.
It's been like that for some time. You know, we've received about 62 inches of snow already this season, and believe me, it's been real tough.
You know, but now you guys have to be real, real proud because Minnesota has been so progressive when it comes to hiring blacks in the professional and on the college level. Now they have hired Dennis Green. Tell us about this, because this is amazing, because Minnesota didn't hire its first assistant coach until 1988. That's just 4 years ago, Larry. So I was really surprised that Minnesota was the team to tap Dennis Green.
No doubt about it, Harold. It's shocking in many ways. It's almost an about face for the Minnesota Viking organization, which over the years has developed a reputation of being a football organization that bordered literally on racism. I mean, they didn't, as you mentioned, hire the first black coach until 1989. And we're talking about 29 years before they finally made a move in that direction or realized that was something that needed to be done. But Jerry Burns, as head coach, made that step and hired a black assistant coach. And Jerry Brown was the gentleman that was selected in that situation. And his situation right now is in limbo, but Denny Green, now the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, named the fifth head coach in the Minnesota Vikings history. And it's amazing, Harold, over the last few weeks, the Minnesota Vikings now hiring Denny Green, the second black head coach in the National Football League. And of course, 6 years ago, it was Clem Haskins becoming the first black head basketball coach at the University of Minnesota, and only the second at that time in the Big Ten. And like 30 days ago, the University of Minnesota hiring only the second major university black athletic director, and Dr. McKinley Boston. So revolutionary might be the word. Minnesota finally making a move.
Okay, that was Larry Fitzgerald, sportscaster.
Is that it?
One of the things that is so important as we get out of that video, we got to realize, man, that was 1992. They had 2 black coaches. Here it is 29 years later. Guess how many black coaches we have? We got 2. They claim we got 3, but Ron Rivera is not black. You understand? Now, something is wrong. You know, they got television today. You are seeing all these brothers and sisters on there talking about the progress being made in the NFL. They have no black owners. They got an Asian woman as an owner. Got an Asian woman. All of a sudden, Dan Snyder, his whole front office is black. He got a black president of operations. He got a black general manager. He got a black female position coach. Why did he hire some Indians? That's who he's been disrespecting all this time. So, you know, this whole NFL thing is really has blown my mind, because I've been out there for decades. You understand? Talking about the same thing with Roy Jefferson and the president of the NFL Players Association that he brought on my show 40 years ago, man. And here we are still acting like slaves. You know, this reminds me of when people were congratulating Harriet Tubman on freeing so many slaves, 300 plus slaves she freed. And she said, hold it. I could have freed hundreds more if they only known they were slaves. So I'm saying, look at the NFL. That's the same thing Colin Kaepernick know. Colin, they didn't know that they're slaves. So I'm kind of blown away, and I'm gonna let y'all throw in on this till we get back to our next clip. Who want to take? You want to take it, Jackie?
You know, just before we got into the clip, I thought about how we approach the Super Bowl and all these, you know, sporting events, and they represent what my boss likes to call steam control. That when you got people thinking about issues, talking about issues, you get them all worked up, and what you do is you give them a little distraction, a little fun, a little something to kind of, you know, make them feel good. And then they relax because it's like, yeah, things are bad, but they're not totally bad. Look, we got football. Yay. You know, we've got all these other things that, you know, it's like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. So when you get that little break, it keeps things from rising to the surface where they just blow wide open. So you have a crisis and then all of a sudden it subsides. And people just have short memories. You know, we don't think about all of that history. You do, because this is you know, we've lived it. You and I and Gary are probably old enough to remember firsthand a lot of this stuff that went down, but people forget. Younger people don't know. I mean, I get into arguments with young folks who think the NBA has always been the NBA as it is today. And I said, I remember going to doubleheader games in Uline Arena, and you know, they say, oh, well, that must have been when there was the ABA. I'm like, no, this was before the ABA. This is before the U.S. Basketball League. They don't have a memory of it. They don't know. They think that, you know, ballers have always been big ballers. They don't remember a time when players had to work other jobs in the off season. They don't know any of this to be the hard life. And so they're looking and saying, well, you know, here's an area where folks can make it. You know, and I watched an interview this morning with Doug Williams where he said when he went to Tampa Bay, he was the lowest paid player in the NFL. He said the second and third string quarterbacks made more money than he did. He made $124,000 a year in his first contract in the NFL. And nobody was, you know, marching, demanding more, calling it an outrage. They were just watching football and enjoying it. People just didn't immerse themselves in the details. And like I mentioned earlier about people watching these pundits argue back and forth, they're not bringing the news. They're not giving you the details. It's not the information to make you stop and think and say, should I really be watching this? Is this really what it's meant to be? You know, we don't plug in that way. So it's just a day off. It's a day to sit back, watch chips, your friends over. I guess people are going to do Zoom watching of the game because that's the trendy thing to do. They're not worried about the real details that speak to real life issues because it's just a game.
Juanita?
I'm a pass on this one. Yeah. I try not to think. I try not to talk about things I don't know. So
that's right, baby. Yeah, you smart. You smart. Okay, Chris, take it.
Yeah, well, on issues like this, I think this is where progressives and young people are frustrated because everyone's like, you know, progress is slow and you got to be gradual. But like progress is so slow. Like whenever they have one of these first, like the first black coach or first black this for a team, instead of being like, oh, that's amazing, it's just like, wow, it took that long. That's the first like thought that comes up. It's just like, it's been like 70 years, so like 100 years of like the NFL. Like, really? We're still getting first black this, first black that. Like they're just now thinking about diversity. The fact they still have the Rooney Rule and it's not working. The fact that we still don't have black coaches, even though they get interviews. And that was reportedly one of the reasons Deshaun Watson wanted out, because there's some racism in the Texans organization, and the players felt in their intelligence was insulted when they hired a 65-year-old black coach to say, here's your coach. Like they know that a 65-year-old coach is not the future. You're not building towards a long-term plan with a 65-year-old first-time hire as a coach. Like that's not your long-term plan for a young black quarterback. That I could see that. Like it's an era where these kids that are even younger than me, they didn't grow up with as much racism. Every generation there's less racism, and they don't have that idea of like it doesn't make sense. It's just like, why is it so white when the league is overwhelmingly black? How is this like a victory to say, hi, you have a a black, you know, executive when there's no black ownership. Like there's no black people at the top making decisions. They're just always a symbolic diversity hire. Like, hey, now shut up. See, now we're inclusive. And it's like, that's not really how it works. So that's the frustration of, yes, we understand progress takes time, but like this snail's pace is like, we've got to pick it up.
Derek?
Yeah, I've always gone to, like, when I do my corporate training, and I mentioned this, I think, on one of the previous shows, I'm less concerned about titles and more concerned about what kind of influence do you have in the organization. And so, you know, listening to Jackie talk about back in the day, I remember when the NBA championship games were on tape delay, where they weren't even prime time. I mean, it was just like, yeah, we're gonna do a tape delay. But yeah, I remember when Denny Green was the coach back then, and everyone thought, wow, we're gonna take off like a rocket. You know, the Rooney Rule, and people were getting the looks. And then, you know, just like everything else, over time, when things go unchallenged, they seem normal. And then we get relaxed. And that's where we are today, where we're like, wow. Because when you asked me, Mr. Bell, the other night about the coaches, I was like, all right, so we got 1, 2, and I was, I was like, okay, he's an assistant. Well, no, I'm like, wow. I still had 3 fingers left on one hand.
Yeah, unbelievable. Gary, how about hitting that point? When the poet talks about his son wanting to play in the NFL. How about?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, we got that one.
Yeah.
Let's go here. Bam. Let's do it.
What I tell my son when he says he wants to play for the NFL, we are done with field work. They are too comfortable shooting down the idea of blacks passing from bullets than throwing bullet passes. Nah. Hell, if it's $1 million deal, they want Emmett Smith but treat you like Emmett Till. They like their teams divided. Not even Johnny can unite us. They like their black shackled, tackled, concussed, like you ACL tear, but don't drop to your knees. You can kneel for the play, but play with the flag. They throw a flag on the play. Tell you you can't play. But this ain't no game to you. $9 million a year ain't change to you, but that contract is them handing change to you. They're stealers of rights who will forgive a fumble, but penalize you for holding on to your blackness. You ever wonder how the country fell in love with a sport where the black men hit each other like Mandingo fighting? The whole thing is a slave ritual. Thought our people found freedom when we ran, but now they got you running back. Got you tossing pigskins like bales of cotton, zigzag, shuck and jive, Bo Jackson, Bojangles. You looking at this game from the wrong angle. They could never understand your anger when they know shotgun is a play and you know it as a threat. When you know boys who stepped to the police and met their defensive end, they will deny their involvement when your brain is scrambled. Imagine blacks thinking they found heaven, then under a helmet is where you and hell met. But then they'll say, why you all mad? You all mad. Didn't Super Bowl 2018 teach you the only way you'll beat patriotism is if you're willing to lose to their eagle or ego? Why you want to play for them? America ain't no team player. New Orleans didn't see no Saints during Katrina. In Detroit, they lying to the people. Because you can't get a win when you're the Browns. Whether in Cleveland or LA, they'll charge us wherever we touch down. When you know your blood is royal, bleeding purple, they'll ask what you're raving about. You get to speaking like a panther, you'll see Hawks, and in Oakland, they'll be raiding your house. See the racists rolling Colts. So giant, you Tennessee Titans bulk for their powers like your revolution is a cardinal sin. These cowboys will always pack us in coffins, and you can't say nothing, no matter how many dead children Chicago bears. But because you my son, you too falcon to have your wings clipped. You'll buck when they buccaneer, meaning the lies they'll try to pirate your rights with, you'll fight with. They'll say slavery and genocide you must forget, but always remember when New York got hit with the Jets. And then they'll tell you that you ain't no team player. Tell them the team you play for has red skin because you've been washing tons of blood and it won't come off. My niggas so fly, we should win an ESPY off of lynchings alone. No, son. If they don't respect your struggle, they don't get your muscle, child. You are black. You don't need their field. You're going to be running your whole life.
Yeah, I hope y'all got that, because that's the real deal. You know, I'm thinking back. You know, Johnny Sample. Some of you, a couple of you might know who he is. Johnny Sample was one of the greatest defensive backs to ever play the game. The brother knew the game from inside out. Come out of HBCU down there at Maryland State. I saw him. I was in high school, and I was up at Cardozo in Maryland State play Howard. Man, he was like Superman against boys. He was like Superman against boys. Then he went to the NFL. He was the first black from the black colleges to play in the All-Star game they used to have. Do y'all remember the college All-Star game where the college All-Stars played against the pros? Well, Johnny Sample was the first ever selected for that game, and had a run-in with Otto Graham, because Otto Graham wanted him to play defensive back instead of running back. So went on to the NFL, played with the Baltimore Colts on the championship team his rookie year. You understand? Went and played on championship team with the New York Jets. He's the only NFL player to ever play on 2 different world championship teams. He was co-captain with Joe Namath on that team that upset the Giants. Was it the Giants they upset? Whoever the Jets, whoever they upset the Baltimore Colts. And here's a brother that is not in the Hall of Fame because they blackballed him because he said what was on his mind. You understand? And his credentials speak, he was all pro, speak for themselves. Now, we got a lot of black brothers in media who will not stand up and say, hey man, why is it that Johnny Sample isn't in the Hall of Fame? Not ever, because they're scared of their positions. They're scared of their position. They will not say, man, Johnny Sample, just like I had to go out on the wing and get Willie Wood inducted into the Hall of Fame, to get Earl Lord inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I was on AM radio. I didn't have a national platform like they got. But they're scared of they're losing that dollar bill and losing that little prestige. You know, so now we come to the real deal. I saw where they spoofed James Brown on Saturday Night Live. Man, let me tell you something. You know, it breaks my heart because this brother came through me. He came through me. And he turned out to be a liar, just like Wilbon, Kevin Blackstone. You know, they get those positions, man, and don't know how to reach back and help people, man. And you can help people in those positions. They ain't got to know what you're doing. They don't know how to do that. All they see is it's about them. I was up at the University District of Columbia many years ago. They did a sports media forum and invited everybody but me. So I was sitting out in the audience, and my man James Brown gets up. And the first thing he said, hey, hold it down. I'm not that Jim Brown that threw women out the window. I'm not that James Brown, that the singer that shot his car up. I said, oh, man. So I waited till he got out. I said, James, you can't do that, man. You can't come down on black brothers like that, man. You just can't. That's what they want you to do. That's what George Solomon, they all laughing. That's what they want you to do. So we got fake news and fake news media people, man. You know, and that is hurting us, man, because I guess it's all about the dollar bill. And they say, Harold, you don't know, you don't know your price, man. You're an angry black man. I guess I am. Because I cannot stand around and watch little children being shot down in the streets, black unarmed men being shot down without a pistol or anything, and cops just keep walking away. They are not learning anything. So I'm saying, where do we go, man? You know, Harold Bell's gonna be the bad guy. How am I the bad guy when I tell the truth? Well, like my cousin always said, it's your truth, Harold. It's your truth. So my truth doesn't matter because they never challenge it. They never challenge it. So anyway, let's go from there. Wow. Anybody? Don't get tongue-tied on it.
Well, I mean, in a lot of those positions, it's similar to the politics discussion we were having earlier. A lot of for those positions, the only way to make it to those positions is to kind of sell out. I mean, I don't want to use the word, but it is what it is. Like, that's the only way that they will allow you into those organizations. You know, that you want to change it from the inside, but they won't let you inside if they feel like you're going to change it. Right? They wouldn't let you in. Like, they're only letting in people who are going to keep the status quo going, or are to adjust into the system. They're going to be changed by the system rather than change the system. Because if they think you're really going to change the system, they're not going to let you in. You see how they treated Bernie Sanders when he ran in the primary, or how they, you know, would treat any as you say, you're an angry black man. Why aren't you getting spots on ESPN? Why isn't nobody interviewing Harold Bell to see what you think, even about Ali or boxing or things that would be your expertise? But no, like, because they're afraid of what you're going to say. Yeah, that you might say something that's true, but it might ruffle the wrong corporate feathers. So that's how they keep the gates up. And that's the issue. Like, we want to change things from the inside, but those gatekeepers do a lot better job than people think of stopping change from the inside. Like, they make sure that you get changed and you don't change the system. And that's true for sports and for politics.
I think CJ nailed it. I think that's exactly what happens. I can remember years ago working at a paper in Minneapolis, and they kept bringing people in for interviews for jobs, and they would always have somebody black. They might even have 2 black candidates, but they never hired anybody black. And so one day I was in the managing editor's office, and I said, you know, you keep talking about you want to diversify the staff, and you want us to bring in more people, and we give you names of people, and you bring them in and talk to them. And I said, it's real disappointing that none of these people seem to get a job, that you know, after a certain number of us in the newsroom, the only way somebody new is going to come in is if one of us goes. I said, that's not a plan for diversity. I don't think that's a plan for success. And he said, you know, Jackie, you've been real helpful to us in this process, and I sure would hate to see that change. But, you know, your approach leaves a little to be desired. So basically what you're telling me was, you just roll with this, or the next person to go be, we'll hire somebody, but you won't be here to see it. And so, you know, you just, and at that point, when I walked out of his office, I started looking for another job, because I knew that I wasn't going to be there long. And I figured, as we like to say in the news business, you can jump or be pushed. And so I decided to jump. But a lot of people aren't going to take that chance, or they really believe, okay, I'm gonna ride out this boss, but the next one's gonna be different, and I'm gonna have some influence. And so you keep waiting around, and you make a little bit of progress over here, you know, but I don't have this big number crunched over here, and you just kind of wait and putter around. You look up, you spent 20, 30 years someplace, and you haven't gotten anything nearly done, but people are patting you on the back, telling you you've been good, you've been influential, and you know, you've really made us think. Yeah, I made you think, but did I make you do? That's a whole different thing. And you know, I think about when people get excited because their kids have a future in sports. You got to make sure your kids got something cerebral going on too. And if they don't, they're going to end up being used. They're going to be underplayed. They're going to get pushed around. They're going to be labeled a troublemaker. And then once that gets into the narrative, it makes it hard for you to ever prove yourself, because people are going to assume that you're going to bring a problem to the table. So when you get traded, when you try to get a better position for yourself, or whatever it is, when you're negotiating a better contract, those things weigh against you. And so a lot of folks are just told, keep your head down and don't push. And we see what the consequences of that have been, but folks haven't stepped up enough in numbers to really make the change. And we saw what happened in numbers when folks started marching after George Floyd. It made folks scramble. But the only way to make sure that the change really happens is to keep that level of pressure on them, because once they, again, the steam control, you start putting some folks in some key places, you start making some changes, you start making some promises, and you back off to let them supposedly implement this stuff. we get Joe Biden telling them, y'all need to slow your roll because I'm not going to do everything you want to do. And you should be happy because I'm better than that other guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Juanita, go, Gary.
Go ahead.
I know you got something to say on this one. Let Gary close it out. Yeah, go ahead,
actually, what CJ and Jackie said. That sums it up.
Okay, Gary, turn it over to you.
I was going to say, you know, following up on what Jackie said, you know, in the corporate arena, we call that having a hall file. People get a hall file. And for many Black folks, regardless of the positions, their lesson is the same as many of the white folks. And that is to keep other Blacks down, or anyone that's going to challenge the status quo. And I had a mentor one time tell me, he said, Gary, always try to use your influence for teachable moments and be careful of what you're going to see when you go into this organization. He said, a lot of Black folks think the white man's ice is colder. And so he says, you're going to see that they're going to do whatever they can to maintain the status quo, regardless of their title, of their position, and just be aware of that. And you're going to have to challenge that, but don't get mad, get strategic in order to get that done. And so I know you see that with a lot of the sports people, but it's a lot with people in corporate America as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me kind of sum things up here from my perspective. What is happening in our community is that they are completely controlling the narrative. They control the narrative because we don't own any CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox News, CNN. We don't have any more Bradleys out from 60 Minutes. We don't have Jim Banks. We don't have Max Robinson, those kind of brothers that really stand up, you know, and take on the system, because for whatever reason, they're not scared. You understand? They got confidence in themselves. And that's the key, man. And still, until we start how many of you guys know that the Washington Post just took Inside Sports from me? Just took it. And I got their sports writers. I got their editor on my show on a regular basis. But you know what they decided to do? Well, Harold Bell is really successful with that Inside Sports. Let's take it to New York and start Inside Sports magazine. That's what they did, man. Now they own the copyright. They got blown out of New York. They stayed up there 2 years, lost several $1 million because, number one, they had Sports Illustrated already there. They had Sports Magazine already there. They had the tabloids there. They weren't very smart to go into New York. That's the last place they should have gone. You understand? But this is what they do. They take from us, man. They take our ideas. Another good example is, what's the brother's name with the cookies? Famous Amos. They just took his name. They took his name and his cookies, man. Now that same organization took his name and his cookies are selling his name and his cookies for $1 billion. Guess how much Famous Amos is worth right now? $20,000. So when I hear Black folks talking about white folks hate us, they don't like us, they love us because they want to be like us. That's why they steal everything, all our great ideas from us. You know, who use all of the suntan lotion? $1 billion industry, not Black folks. They trying to be Black. They getting big noses, big lips, big butts. Come on, man. So I'm saying, you know, everybody, I don't expect everybody to be a Harold Bell, but there's other ways where we can help each other and you can still maintain your job. You can maintain your thing. They ain't got to know that you and I are talking, but we are so insecure, man. I don't know why I'm not insecure. I come from an outhouse, a one-room outhouse, man, to the White House. I know I'm blessed in many, many ways, man. But that's why I'm so glad, man, to see that there are some young folks that are taking a stand. But man, until we start owning some of these media outlets, because they can control the narrative. That's what they did with Colin Kaepernick. They paid him off and you don't even hear anything from him anymore. He's a hero to me, there's no doubt about it. So, hey man, we got a long ways to go. I don't know I never see it in my lifetime. But, you know, more power to James Brown. If that's what you and Michael Wilbon and Kevin Blackstone and the rest of the guys that came through me, if you're comfortable with that, go for it, man. But I cannot sit and watch this go on and not say anything about it. Because you got my number. If you got something that I'm saying wrong about, you call me. Or when you see me, say, hey, Harold, can I speak to you for a moment? They don't do that, man. So anyway, hey, man, fellas, so it's time for us to get out of here. Anybody want to close out? Let's close this thing out, man. The day is Super Bowl Sunday. I'm going to try to enjoy the game somewhere, but I know what the real deal is, and I know that we're still being shafted from the outside and from the inside. I sent a clip out this week saying, picked Negroes. And those two young black ladies hit it right on the head. Hit it right on the head. They pick us, man, because they know that many of us are not going to reach back and pull somebody else along with us. CJ, go ahead.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm just going to also try to enjoy the game, but it's hard to ignore that they're having 20,000 people show up to that game as well. So I'm going to steer clear of Tampa for the next few weeks for the super spreader event. But other than that, like, let's just, we're still waiting on those immediate checks for 3 weeks ago from Biden. I'm just going to try to keep our eyes on the ball. Like, I mean, it's okay to enjoy the Super Bowl and to take your mind off all the depressing stuff going on in DC, but it's still just a lot of problems to fix. It's hard to enjoy those little moments when it's like ongoing disastrous pandemic and all the crazy stuff that's happening. So just try to enjoy some football, see if Tom Brady will win his 18th Super Bowl or something. We'll see.
Juanita, close out, baby. Tell us something. What you want to say, baby?
Gotta unmute.
You gotta unmute yourself. You ain't said that for so long. You done muted yourself.
Only thing I have to say is that I'm just not going to give up hope. I truly believe that there's the sun is going to shine on the other side of the storm, and I'm going to just keep coming back. That's it.
All right, Jackie.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pass on the game today. And I got a little work to do. I'm going to spend time calling some friends and family I haven't seen and spoken to in a while, and just, you know, spend a little time with them, share a little love, and let them know that I'm thinking of them.
Okay. We see Ed Sargent has joined us. Ed, you want to close out with a thought? You know, Super Bowl Sunday, what does that mean to you? That mean anything to you?
He got his KC hat on.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You're still muted, Ed.
You're still muted.
You're muted. There you go.
There you are.
I'm still getting used to this beautiful technology, man. How's everybody? Everybody good?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Good. So I got one word, and that's the Chiefs. That's all I need to say.
Oh, okay.
Where's my friend? She sometimes is in this group. She's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Pardon me.
Yeah, she's tailgating today.
Tailgating, man.
Oh, yeah?
She's tailgating, yeah.
Down in Florida?
No, virtually.
Okay,
yeah. Yeah, she gathered all her alumni people together.
I better tune into that.
Yeah, you guys hang around for a couple of minutes. Gary, go close it out. But I just want to say that, you know, that thank you guys for participating on this Sunday. I know got a lot of things to do, a lot of things on my mind. But I still want to say, and I still believe that every black face I see is not my brother, and every white face is not my enemy. And you know, and that's how you got to do it. You just got to buckle up your pants and put on your big boy hat and try to stay alive. That's what it's all about. Gary?
No, you said it all, Mr. Bell.
Okay, you guys don't go nowhere. Just stay right there. Gary gonna close out of here, and we see you next Sunday.
That concludes our show. Be safe.
Great show planned for next Sunday.
Yeah, don't be a super spreader. Be smart. Wear your mask.
Am I staying on the line? Harold,
yeah, you staying on live. Jackie, stay for a minute. We got a thing we need to talk about. Okay, Gary's okay to go? Can we go now? You can go.
Hi, I'm Harold Bell. My wife Hattie and I found the nonprofit organization in 1968, shortly after the riots that almost destroyed my hometown, Washington, D.C. The program caters to the needs of at-risk children as it relates to social services such as education, law enforcement, drug abuse, gang-related violence, and other antisocial behavior.